All right, Mayriv, apologies for how long this has taken. I've been incredibly busy. So you're saying that you're MG2 and that you struggle with T-side Inferno. Sometimes with opponents better than me, it feels almost impossible to win. Okay. So typically if your opponents are better than you, it's going to be tough to win, right? But here, let's take a look at this line you're taking as well. So one of the things you want to pay attention to, obviously you don't want everyone running the same line because then you can get spammed. However, a very common line for CTs to run is to peek out to beside car. And if you look at what this line looks like from CTs, they're going to come out usually like this, and they're going to be looking right at you. You want to be on one of the sides usually, right? Typically the inside is going to give you the best ability to kind of catch someone off guard, especially if they happen to peek out here. It gets a little bit more awkward. But I feel like the way you're walking, the route you're taking here is right down the middle of where they're going to be looking when they're going to get there. So I would usually be looking at maybe kind of going... If you had the good spawn, maybe you could kind of jump in here, but you don't want to do that if you have the good spawn, right? You want to be taking that good spawn and getting up close to swing. I would be kind of looking at staying on the right and then kind of swinging out behind like this, whereas the first player is moving up like this, right? So you're kind of playing together with him. I don't like running up the middle initially. Then pulling out the smoke, you could have kept your gun out for a little bit longer. Just for fear of someone kind of doing something weird, but it's not too bad. And then the way you're peeking there, so if you look at this from his perspective, let's take a look at this from his perspective. You'll notice there for a second you were kind of standing still. So if I watch it from back here, let's imagine he was just holding the angle there, right? Okay, so you made two crucial mistakes. First, you went way too wide. So the thing is, when you're in a situation like this, the longer you move in either direction, the worse it is in terms of how easy it is for your opponent to kill you. Because, you know, you're not doing complex math in your head, but what you are doing is your brain's pretty good at pattern recognition, right? So when someone's running strafing straight in a line and making no changes to their movement, it's easy to, you know, see you here and then know you're going to be here, right, and hit that shot, right, because there's no variation there. That's why pistol rounds are so random, because, you know, they see you, you know, you're moving left and right, and they see you here, and then they see you here, and their brain wants to shoot here, right, but because you shift back, now, you know, they don't hit you, right? That's the problem. So you never want to be strafing too wide in one direction, or you're making it super easy for your opponents to hit you. And you also don't want to be spraying the Glock like that. You're just not going to be killing people typically by spraying the Glock like that. It's much better if you came like here and you did something like this, kind of like jiggled it and took a couple shots, or even if you came out but you were like kind of sitting like that. Better would be getting the pit if possible. Here, you hug this right wall as you come up, which is good, right? You're kind of staying out of view of this player. What would be good is if you came up to here and then kind of strafed out on him. It's not necessary in the 4v4, but if you're thinking about a situation where you want to get that kill, like if you really want it, that would be the way to do it, and that would be an aggressive route that would make sense when you play, you know, matchmaking, right, where aggressive routes are usually what you're going for. Then here, I'm going to toss that flash and make your way out. Usually you don't want the first two players taking the same route. Usually you want to vary up the route, so like the first player might jump out towards the site, the second player might come out like this, and then the third player might be the one that jumps across. When you go the same route as your teammate, a lot of the time it kind of opens up opportunities for players like this guy in the bomb site here to get multi-frags, because he's looking at the first player, hits the shot, and the second player, it's an easy shot because they're in the same spot as the initial player, right? Then pushing in, you want to be angle isolating here. So your teammate did a good job. He gets into pit, but obviously some people have to push the site. That's why having a player jump out to the left here is important, because you don't want these two players, you know, one of them can get here, but now the other one has to run right up the middle. And if there's no moto smoke, you're basically a sitting duck there. So if you get into pit like that, you kind of want to either be staying in pit, or in this case, you probably have to get out of pit. But I'd be looking at like getting over this way, or, you know, potentially trying to rush into graveyard, but that's a bit uncomfortable as well. Your situation here in general is a little bit uncomfortable. But then you were also holding W while attacking that guy. That's really never going to be the play. And here, standing still while you attack that guy. You also strafed hard into the wall. You knew the player was here. You could have just kind of jiggled out on him instead of strafing all the way out into the wall. Again, trying to make his shots as hard to hit as possible. And here, you're just on a Glock. Probably nothing interesting going to happen. This time, you're hugging the right wall. The swing was almost kind of counter to what I was talking about on that pistol round, especially when you have a Glock on the second round there. You want a hard swing. You want to just take it and just go run with it. And as the first player, you just sacrifice yourself there. You can jump around the corner. That's probably not a bad idea. But strafing around the corner is fine as well. But what you want to do is you want to change up the direction. So you want to strafe hard to get here. And that way, if someone is fighting you, let's say they're fighting you from here, they're looking here, and your teammate will come out here, and there's as much of a gap between the two of you as possible. That's really what you're looking for. As the entry fragger, you're trying to create space for your teammates, and to do so, strafing really wide when they're following you and allowing them space to peek behind you is usually a very good idea. Then here, you typically just don't want to be running through the middle. You're running through the middle here. I throw that molly and immediately jump off to the right to dodge that nade. That's the easiest way to do so. The other reason it's important is because an opper can peek behind car or in front of half wall just as your molly is landing, right? And so they'll take a shot on you and take maybe 10 to 15 points of damage while taking that shot. That's almost nothing because your molly hasn't even landed by the time they get to the angle. So unless you have a perfect spawn, in which case you run up and you can try and get quickly into here, but I know you didn't have the perfect spawn, in which case you want to try and get into this corner as quickly as possible. Like I said, the only way to get here is if you have a really, really good spawn, and some players will get kind of immediately jumping onto this. There's a little ledge right at the back of here. You can kind of see it. This log right here. And you can jump on that and play it. It does open up an opportunity that oppers could hit you, but it's not an easy shot by any means. Then that flash isn't really that great either. If someone is corner, they're going to see it coming. If they're sandbags, they're going to see it coming. You know, pretty much anywhere in this whole vicinity, they're going to see coming. The only people you might blind are like CT and spools and maybe sight. But those are spots that don't really matter. If you're throwing a flash like that, personally, I like to throw one that'll land right here and peek out in front of it, so they're kind of like turned around. You can also kind of do some weird stuff, like you can bounce it off the ceiling here, and that'll land in front of the wall. So what you do is you come here, bounce it off this ceiling so it lands right here, and then you peek out with the wall blocking it, right? So they'll see it coming, and then you peek it. Those are some pretty decent ways to do it. Then here, you're kind of just sitting around. So when your teammate is peeking this angle right here, you either want to be aggressive and you're trying to force your way in, so you're kind of crossing over to peek out here, or even getting on sandbags to post on the angle he's peeking, or be playing anti-flash, be playing behind this wall, dodging flashes. So if your teammate that is getting aggressive gets blind, you can peek out and make sure you can kill the player that's peeking out onto him. If you're sitting in the middle of the open, you're not getting anything done, and you're putting yourself in a situation where you could easily get flashed and killed. Then your peek out here was a little bit weak as well. Your teammate had already kind of cleared that angle. However, if an opper was there, they would have killed you. I prefer either short jiggles to draw out a shot and maybe tap if you think an M4 is there, or jump directly onto the ledge of the sandbag here and allow that opper. If you've watched my 4 levels of movement, I show my clip going banana looks very similar to that, where I kind of jump onto the sandbag, and I show a clip where I jump across the angle that the guy Spools is holding, and he tries to strafe out into it, and it's a free kill. That's kind of the idea behind that. So here you're going to push in. Typically, when you're going through that smoke, the safest angle to go to is to jump through right here. The way you ran through, someone could push through the CT smoke and you would be a sitting duck. Of course, you have to have some players going there, but typically the first player wants to get, again, think about creating space for your teammates, right? If you run through that smoke along this back wall and you get sprayed down, your teammates are probably behind you, or they're in very easily attackable spots in relative to the position you died at, right? But if you come out to the left here, you can get a pretty good angle on that player. If he does kill you, he's forced to be looking way away from your teammates. It gives you also a pretty good angle onto the player's spools or coffins, and it gives you a decent angle to peek out from as well. Now, typically, you want that first player to be hugging this wall because this is the aggressive route for the most part. Like, kind of the route you took is the aggressive route. However, your teammate made contact before you did, and then this smoke dropped down. And when that type of situation happens, you have to be kind of on the fly, quickly making a decision on how you want to play out the round. And I think the way to play it out is to not run through it quite like you did. And here, you look a little bit confused. I mean, you guys know you have the bomb site control, so that's when you immediately get into after plan. So now you have 2 players towards banana, which means one of them is going to slot in where you are, and one of them should slot in banana. Typically, this is not a spot you want to be playing after plant. Usually, you have the bomber end up there, because where else is he going to go, right? Which means, once you made your way in, you probably should have just got over here, or here, or here, and played from there, because now this bomber doesn't really have anywhere to go once he plants the bomb. Unless he runs out of the bomb site over to dark spot, which is actually pretty good. He's kind of forced to do that, though. And now, I don't think you're in a great spot either. So holding the smoke, it's pretty good. Teammate gets the kill. All right. So again towards banana. Again, kind of up the middle. Getting in this cubby is also risky because people like to nade stack this cubby. So keep that in mind. That flashes something. So the way you're peeking, your movement here, although you're making an attempt, your movement does leave opportunities for players that have good aim to land shots on you, because you're just a little bit outside of optimal. You're peeking a little bit wider than you should when you can, and I think that you probably get punished by these players who are saying when you play against good players you have trouble. You're probably getting punished because, partly at least, because your movement isn't perfect. And just try and narrow those jiggles down a little bit if you can. Be a little bit smoother on, when you get blind, you back away a little bit more quickly and all that. And here, can be forgiven to some extent for not checking top oranges in most cases. However, because there's a smoke in the middle of the bomb site, you don't have to worry about the angles you typically have to be worried about, which are around the back of fountain, which means you really should be peeking second oranges or top oranges because there's no other danger, right? The problem is when you get into situations where you have to peek multiple angles at the same time, and that's when it's kind of forgivable to not peek all of them. But in that situation you were pretty covered from every other angle but top oranges. So once you get to the top of banana, you're kind of just sitting around for a lot longer than you should be, which leaves openings fuck, for your opponents to catch you as you're not really prepared and take you down. Then here, pushing up top middle. So you only want to be committing this wide if your team is actually with you. And it looks like you're trying to make some sacrifices to ensure that your team is given space to work. But because you're playing matchmaking, and really at all levels of matchmaking, it ends up looking a lot like this. Your teammates aren't taking that space and using it. So instead of going wide here, what you did is you went so wide that there was no possibility for you to really get away. Now, there was kind of, and because he had a pistol, you could have shot a few bullets and then kind of just knife out, jump away, and YOLO it. But you didn't really give yourself the best opportunity to survive there if you didn't immediately kill a player. So you played against someone there with pretty good movement. On this angle, he had very good movement. He was drawing out a lot of your shots. And because your positioning was really weak out in the middle of the open here, you got wrecked by that movement, right? And, you know, maybe if he had bad movement and he just gifts you the kill, it works, right? And that's part of the thing about, you know, when you play better players, it's like stuff that works against worse players. It's not good to use against, you know, lesser players, which is like being super wide and their movement is bad, so you get the free kill. But it works. And then you play against good players, and they almost kind of dummy you because their movement punishes you for bad positioning in situations like that. And again, you were trying to, like, it makes sense to get wide to push up if you have teammates peeking inside of you, you know, peeking on the inside angle. But because you didn't, that means that you were just trapped out here with no support, and that's not a very good situation. So I would say kind of trust your teammates a little bit less. That seems like an issue. Then here, just got to be more concise. Just strafe across. You just got to strafe across there. It's unfortunate. So you got an AK again. So you got to be careful because when you ran across there, the opper could already be at car. And, you know, typically when you get here, you want to be jumping across that angle just in case. Then here, I can't really say what this is. It's like one of those things, you know it when you see it, that this just doesn't look right, but I'm not quite sure. So you kind of made the right play. You kind of moved slightly in as you come out. Not too much, but it was good. I don't think you should. Yeah, here's the problem. You're looking right side when the only danger really possible is left side, right? Your teammate is running up this line left, and even if he's not looking right, if someone is right, he's going to die. I think he was looking right as well. The only dangerous angle is this exact angle that your opponent is now peeking. And I would say that you probably want to be slightly off from your teammate just to prevent this spray down. You know, you don't want to be very off, but if you were just like a little bit over, right, that would be pretty good. You know, when you're playing with a team, a lot of the time the first two players can take a similar entry line to get very aggressive and trade out with each other. However, I think when you're playing in a pug, you don't want to be taking similar entry lines with the first two people. I think you want the first guy to take this type of entry frag line, and you want to take the supporting line. So he comes up here and comes around. Right, so what does he clear? He clears this initially, and then he kind of starts to, you know, begin to clear this kind of cone, right? Whereas you can come up here and then kind of strafe, like, you can come in, strafe wide, and kind of be either in the middle or slightly to, you know, all the way on the right, so that you can kind of peek out and clear up. That being said, your teammates are pretty spread, so I understand why you feel pressured to follow your teammate, because, it, you know, by the time... like he would be here, you would be here, and your teammate would be here, which is simply too far apart. You know, I would prefer if he was a bit slower, if he delayed a second, and then you went in this way, you know, on the right wall, and he went up the left with a second teammate. But definitely kind of strafing out and then back in would be a good idea to not line up. And being worried about the correct angle would also be a good idea. So you do get the kill. Chasing it down there makes sense. You know, if he was better, you have to worry about how hard you're swinging there. Because if he was better, so if we show, it's kind of hard to describe watching in a demo, but hopefully I can make this make sense. So he's going to make contact here, get a kill. And you see how there was a gap there where he was kind of spraying and backing up, and you just weren't close enough to get the kill on him until you wide swung. A good player, what he's going to do is, you know, he's going to back up, but then he's going to stop like right here and kill you because you had 11 health, right? He's going to stop and then get a shot off on you because there's enough time for him to reset. And that's the issue. So this is just kind of ineffective trading. You want to be close enough that you shoot him essentially as soon as he kills your teammate. You don't want to walk into a player as they're spraying you down. You don't want to enable a spray down by your opposition. However, you don't want to be that spread, because when you're that spread, a good player can get one kill, reset, and then get the next, right? You want to be like, you know, he's firing, let's say he's firing, you know, he gets the kill here, and he like finishes firing here, and then you peek out right here, you know, like right on the inside, right? Because then he's not accurate. Yeah, running up the middle again. When you're that late, I'm pretty sure you were just really late to banana there. You need to delay. You have to know, you know, those nades are going to fuck you. And good players, better players are going to start doing things other than just nading right here. But it's very obvious at your level, people are just nading right there because, you know, you're not kind of adjusting to it, right? So if you have a decent spawn, like any of the first 2 or 3 spawns, you can get here, maybe here. If you have the first spawn, you can get here essentially, or delay and sit T-stairs and wait. You can't force in like you are. You know, you have another pretty bad spawn. They definitely could have naded you. And then your molly is pretty deep here. Yeah, your molly's very deep there, and it actually gets them for 60 plus damage a piece because they run back through it. That molly could actually make sense in some rare circumstances where you know they're fighting here and you molly behind them as part of a coordinated take, because you make sure that they have to fall back through it. But they did not have to fall back through it. They optionally decided to fall back through that. If you want to throw the molly correctly, sit around like here and then just crouch and you can throw it over and it'll land there. Or if you want to do it perfectly, you sit in this back corner. So I'll show you. You sit in this back corner here. And you aim like right there, like at the top of that thing. You also want to be making sure that when you've got a Mac 10, you're playing hyper aggressive, so you're taking this type of line to push up. And that's the type of situation where that molly could make sense, but your teammate would have to throw it from here, and you're here, and then the molly lands, and you quickly try and push up and catch them if they're not running back through it. Now here, 4v3. I would be sticking away from Mac 10s for the record. I feel like unless you're playing with a team, a Mac 10 against a gun round isn't going to be very successful because you're not closing the gap very effectively. You know, you can see it from your game all game long. You have been very rarely closing the gap and getting very close range with them. So why would a Mac 10 necessarily be good? You know, a Mac 10 is really good when you're playing with a team, again, because you can close the gap, your team is playing with you, and you have the utility to push them into situations where you can be close range with them. It's very intuitive on the CT side in matchmaking. That's what makes the MP9 so good. But on the T side, the Mac 10 isn't quite as good just because you can't really know, you can't really close the gap very effectively with consistency. Then here, that was a little bit better on your banana take. Again, you want to make sure that only one of you is clearing once you get to top banana, if at all possible. And you don't want to be waiting around if you can help it. So that smoke goes down, a flash over. That can draw out utility, but the one thing you should really be looking for is this player doing exactly what he did there. You have to be catching that. You know, before you even did, you should have been catching that, because where's the gap? The gap is right there. And, you know, he's doing that play because he's pretty weak, but someone could be peeking around the back of this and trying to use it as kind of a one-way with a rifle to catch you off guard, and they very likely would have killed you, right? Because you weren't paying attention to it up until you ran right into it. And here, strafing around, not a bad play. You know, it's tough to get that second kill. If your aim was a bit better, you definitely would have picked it up, I think. But I can't really fault you. Your aim isn't bad. It's probably just kind of, you know, normal for your rank. Again, similar to Banana, you don't want to be going towards middle at that timing either. Either get into pit quickly or don't get into it at all, at least to begin with. The Molly is also a little bit forward, so I don't think it blocks off of here. So that would have been a situation where you could have smoked CT just to prevent the rotate from coming through immediately. You know, it would have made sense depending on the timing. And here, typically don't want to be running into the site while spraying, because even though it works very often, I'm going to show you something just that's kind of funny. Even though it works when they're low health, it works, you know, sometimes. It's also the type of situation that doesn't always work. You know, there's plenty of times where these things go completely wrong because spraying while running is not particularly effective. All right, so let me show you my desktop here. All right, we'll watch this, right? So Juices, this is Juices going by Zal. He's got a FAMAS, right? Alistair has 5 health. It's not always very effective. Then here, I mean, you're 4v1. But I wouldn't really be spraying running into the site, and you also kind of ran close when running in. Usually you want to take the further back angle, so you'd want to be peeking from back here. And I think it was made a little bit awkward based on your teammates' positioning. Sometimes you're forced into that type of situation. However, I don't think you necessarily were that time around. So just going straight into an execute, not a huge fan of that. Usually you can kind of work around top banana for a while, and they're throwing their smokes down freely. Typically what the CTs want to be doing is delaying those smokes as long as possible, and that's why working around top banana in a pug works pretty well, because people are aware of the concept that you want to hold on to your smokes as long as possible. However, they're not aware of how to do that effectively. And then you end up working around top banana looking for a pick on T side and catching quite a few picks because, you know, your opponents are kind of holding shit angles. But it would seem that in this situation, your opponents are just throwing their smokes down really early. And if they're doing that, you can just delay and then go for an execute late when they have no smokes left. Seems like these rounds are playing out very, very quickly, like much more quickly than you would expect. Now here, your teammates just got the kills and they got the bomb site control. Pushing through, not necessary. This is a play I would make in a pug just because I kind of screw around in pugs, but definitely a play you don't need to be making. If you want to make the aggressive play, wait the smoke out and then lurk on the rotators, you know? When you go through like that, players are not that likely to be, like, why would they be here, you know, looking this direction? That's pretty unlikely. What's fairly likely is library inside of arch, which is, you know, what will get you killed and what did get you killed, or kind of like here, but looking this way, right? And if that happens, you're not blinding them with that flash. They're just going to turn back around. You're almost like giving them a gift by telling them you're there by throwing that flash. In fact, it would have been more effective to just walk through it to begin with. And here, final round of the half. And that's why you can't make that play, because the Opera should have killed you. The way you're throwing those smokes, a player could still be here, here. You're not like super hard clearing top banana when you don't use the utility. And you don't really necessarily need to use all of that utility on top banana every time. I like to molly car. I like to come back here, spam through that molly, and then kind of just clear this out, this whole area. It's pretty risky, but your opponents have not a single time played in any of these angles, but you're still kind of playing... I think you guys have double molly top banana a couple of times now, which I don't think is necessarily right if they've never played aggressive in a pug. And here, you're really just okay, don't do that. All right, running out in the middle of the open with a molly, probably not the play. Your team is playing like you're trying to throw utility, but it's kind of disjointed. When you throw that utility, your team needs to be ready to go in, and this is why I don't like kind of supporting and throwing a lot of utility when I'm in pugs, even in higher rank pugs. This still happens. You throw utility, like you throw utility from the position you were, which is at the back of the pack, and then somehow you run out and you're first one in. That's very common, and if that's happening, you're not in a good situation. Like, you shouldn't be throwing that utility if that's happening. Then here, typically peeking out from down here isn't very effective. You either play the off angle, right, or you peek from up here, right? Because what are they going to peek when they're coming around this corner here? It's pretty obvious. This is a very easy angle to peek. There's just one angle you're exposed to. You peek out on it and you get the free kill. And I talk about that a lot. Typically, when you're in an angle, you never want to be hard holding an angle unless it's an off angle or you have some strong advantage or you're opping, right? Which is a strong advantage. More often than not, you either want to be playing an off angle or jiggling. And when you're in an afterplant, usually off angles are really, really strong because as the numbers in the game get lower and lower and lower, off angles get more and more effective because... first of all, they're less likely to trade on you, right? Because, they're less likely to have a second player that traps you in that corner. Or, if they do trade on you, they're more likely to take quite a bit of time to do so because they don't have that second player immediately ready to trade. And when you have the bomb planted, if you're in a 3v3 or a 2v2 or something, if you can guarantee one kill, you're in a good spot, right? Because they have the pressure to keep the numbers high to get into that bomb site so one can defuse and one can cover. When it's a 1v1, I think it pretty heavily benefits the T's, especially if you had wasted quite a bit of time of the CTs by playing off angles, catching them off guard and wasting their time, So I think your movement wasn't perfect. Your lines into the bomb site could certainly use at least a little bit of work. And kind of you just need a bit more experience on what to do and how to counter plays because you really were in this situation where you got hit by those Molotovs, like by those nades on banana and then mid like 6 or 7 times.